A warm welcome. My name is Haylette Bertrand, and thank you for watching this video. I work at the Institute for Futures Research, and that is linked to the University of Stellenbosch Business School. And as you might know, the 9th of August is Women's Day in South Africa, and we usually celebrate women during the course of August. So in light of this, we at the IFR has thought that it's a great opportunity now to really celebrate the work that women are doing in the field of futures thinking and futures research, and to spotlight a few of these remarkable women. So it gives me great pleasure, therefore, to welcome a few of these women: Doris Viljoen, Marguerite Coetzee, Zanne, Horrell, Maree Conway, and Deidre Samson. Thank you very much, ladies, for joining us today and for being willing to share with us how and why you are in this field. So let's start off by you introducing yourself, and then maybe just sharing how and why you decided to get involved in this field of futures thinking and futures research. So if I may, I'm going to start with Doris. Doris, can you share with us how this field got hold of you, or how you got hold of this field?
Certainly, and thanks for the opportunity. All through my life, I studied business and strategy, and all through my life tried to keep a balance between teaching on the one hand and actually doing consulting work on the other hand. So my consulting work mostly focused on feasibility studies, location assessment studies for large capital projects, and also helping organizations to sort of find their next direction because their industry might have been changing under their feet. And as a result of that, I realized I am making projections for 20, 30 years into the future and sucking from my thumb whether I think this thing will be able to make money over the next 20 or 30 years. And then I found the course in future studies, and it was like, oh, I'm home. This is my place. Because future studies wants you to think of everything so that you can make sense of one or two things that it's going. And it so resonated with me. So it was like, yay, I'm home. So I found future studies quite late. So I did a lot of consulting work, found future studies late in, I think I did my master's in about 2013, 2014, around there somewhere. So I found it late, but I was very grateful to have found it.
And Doris, where are you currently working?
Oh, at the coolest place in the world, you know. So I have two jobs. I'm the senior futurist at the Institute for Futures Research, where I do commissioned research, engage with our clients, and help them think about the longer futures, consult with industry bodies, do a lot of research, and make a few speeches here and there. And then I also get to teach on our academic programs, because at the business school, we have a postgrad diploma and a master's degree and a PhD. In future studies, and I get to teach the cool modules like scenarios and organizational foresight, and then the final module in the master's program is where we help our students to sort of find their own space. In other words, what kind of futures work do you think you are going to be doing? What kind of framework will you be using? What kind of tools and techniques do you pack into your toolkit? And that's, I think, my favorite module that I'm teaching.
Thank you, Doris. Sounds very interesting. Now, if I'm to ask Maree, if you can share with us how you managed to enter or got into the field of futures thinking or futures research.
Sure. I was working at Swinburne University in the 1990s. And the Vice Chancellor called me into his office one day and said, we're restructuring the division you work in now, and you don't have a job anymore. So I sort of thought, I think I'm okay. I don't think I've done anything wrong. And they asked me to lead the planning department for the university, which was great. But then he said, and we want you to do foresight. And I thought, yeah, I know what foresight means, but what does it mean in the sense of strategy? And so I asked him if any other university in Australia did foresight, and he said no. So I went back and Googled it, found out what it was, and I went, oh yeah, I can do that. Yeah, it's fine. Thinking it would be just another part of my job, developing strategy for the university. But by the end of the second year, I realised that something had shifted. something had changed in my brain, and I decided eventually that I needed to find out more about it. So I asked Richard Slaughter, who was running a course at Swinburne, if I could just sit in on the first subject of the Masters. So I did that, and the second week of the Masters I went, got to do the whole course. Did the course, and then I went, got to start my own business. Because I realised that working in universities was great. I'd worked there for nearly 30 years, but I couldn't do foresight effectively in the university. So I work with universities now, among other organisations as well, doing usually short-term projects with them, and usually around environmental scanning or scenario planning. Yeah, but at the moment I'm doing my PhD on contested ideas of the university and how they, excuse me, enable or constrain the university's futures. So I've stuck to my university roots all the way through. Excuse me. Yeah, so that's where I am at the moment.
And Maree, how long have you then been in futures? Is that since the 90s then?
1999.
Okay.
Yeah.
So quite a long stretch of time.
Yeah, yeah. And it's been, I started off very naive with this work, and it's been a learning process for me over those 20 years or so, working out exactly what it was that it's that finding the space in the conversation that's for you. So that took quite a few years, but just being able to work in this field where you're looking at the future, looking at what's new in the present, and getting people to stretch their thinking a bit, it's new every day with every client. Yeah,
absolutely. We find the same here. It's very exciting. So next up is Deirdre. Deirdre, if you can share with us, how did you stumble into this field? Because you've got quite an interesting background.
Yes, thank you, Helette. And yeah, I think it really started with I'm very, very curious about why people in organizations particularly are successful or unsuccessful, and looking at and understanding how they think, how they make decisions, and then the actions that key people take. So I started to look at the great futurists around the world, as well as in South Africa, and really to see how they look at the way the future is unfolding and how this impacts the decisions. And at the time I was working in an alcoholic beverage company, and I think what fascinated me was to watch to see how products or brands either were incredibly successful or they crashed and burned. And at the time, I came to the conclusion that the answer really lies somewhere between strategy, having unique insights into customers or consumers, and then being able to generate foresight for industries and products. And it's really about looking intelligently at the future. And then, and I love this, really joining the dots of different trends, needs, and events. And at the time, I needed to, I thought, well, how do I be successful in this field? And I also have a very strong belief in lifelong learning. And when I was in the company, we used to get the subscription service from the Institute for Futures Research. And that also piqued my interest in futures and how it can practically be used. And as Doris alluded to as well, we stumbled across future studies. I did the postgrad thinking that I would stop there. And yes, fell in love with it, and moved on to masters, completed that and said never again. I have now been provisionally accepted to do my PhD. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm very curious about organizations and how they are successful or not. So it's really focusing on organizational resilience and capabilities. And really, that's really where my passion lies. And I love looking at saying, well, how can we, especially in times like now, how can we look at organizations and assist them from a futures point of view, looking at what we can do now, as well as what we can do tomorrow and the next day.
And Deirdre, if I'm correct, this also led to you deciding to also go the consulting route to be able to assist different organizations and not staying with the beverage company that you were at.
Yes, I found that my love is within futures. My background is marketing and innovation. And what I loved is that I'm able to take all three of those and look at, no matter what the industry is, it's more about what the thinking is, what the strategic intuition and tools and methods. And that's, I think, what I really loved about futures, and being a consultant within any industry allows me to do that. And that's truly what I love about futures.
Great, thanks Deirdre. And if I may, Marguerite, if I can ask you to share your background and how you stumbled onto futures, and you're doing some very cool things, so please share with us.
Yes, so I guess it started with, I was born during a time when South Africa was transitioning into democracy. So I've grown up in this uncertain space and unclear world, and grappling with questions of what is my identity and my purpose, and where do I fit in this space, and where things are going. And it was kind of when I first stumbled across anthropology that I started piecing things together and figuring things out, and seeing the world from a different perspective, and just learning from different knowledge systems and different people. But what I found difficult with that is it lacked a tangible way of implementing strategies and actually putting into place these changes that I saw needed to happen. So that's how I came across future studies, and actually did the course at the USB, University of Stellenbosch, their course. But with anthropology, nobody knows what it is. So I found out very quickly it's very difficult to find a job. That's how I ended up in marketing. But yeah, I also found that the kind of futures work that was being done in marketing was quite limited, or a little bit superficial. They call it trends or trend spotting, which can't really do, but it just felt very frustrating that you've got these confines and commercial expectations, and the client wants a certain narrative, but they're not really always open to seeing things as they really are. So that's what I really appreciated about future studies, that you can go and understand the world, and anticipate where it's going and actually shape it. So it's not just this passive career, you actually have this opportunity to create change.
And I'd like to address that what you've mentioned now is that I think now in the world at the moment, we need to embrace that, because we mustn't sit back and feel that things are happening to us. We must also, step forward and say, what are the possibilities and how we can do change. So then last but not least, sorry, Zanne, if I can ask you if you can share your road to this. You also come from a very interesting background that might not necessarily link so much with future studies and the uncertainty that lies with that, but we'll be interested to hear what you have to say.
My apologies, I am, my phone started ringing just as you called me. I didn't, I didn't predict that. Thanks very much, Hele. I'm trying to get rid of my phone, but it's unfortunately linked to my computer, so I can't get the two to disconnect. Yes, so I'm Zanne Horrell, and I am currently busy with my master's in future studies. I actually stumbled onto the world of futures serendipitously. I was very lucky one evening at a dinner party. I sat next to someone, so I didn't have this long quest like some of you have had looking for something. I was actually very comfortable where I was, but also maybe in the back of my mind, always not sure that I found what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So when I was having this dinner party, I was having this conversation with the person next to me, and he was busy with his master's in future studies. And I came home that evening and I said to my husband, if I ever study one day again, I think I found something that I might want to study. So it was a very vague thought at the time. And then, as serendipity happens, because I'm an alumni of the USB, I got the invitation to the an introductory session at the and I thought, oh, what can I lose? I can just go and hear what this is all about. So I was sitting in the room listening to Professor Roux speaking, and then Doris came up. And by the end of her conversation, I was convinced. I mean, I went home and I said to my husband, okay, I guess I'm studying next year, which for someone who hasn't studied for a long time was quite a mental adjustment. But I started my PG dip in 2017, and it literally changed my life. It completely changed my perspective on the world. And by the end of 2017, I realized that I have found the thing that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So I quit my job, because I think, Maree, like what you were saying, is I think it's very difficult to reinvent yourself in the space that you are in. So although I felt that I could contribute in the environment that I was in with foresight, it wasn't how they saw me. And I wanted to do this full time. I didn't want to just do it as a sideline. So I enrolled for my master's. I'm still busy with my master's. And in the space of this time, one of my classmates and I, who also became really good friends, we've started the South African chapter of what Peter Bishop calls the international movement, Teach the Future. So having been exposed to futures thinking at a late stage in my life, both Janine and I realized that within futures thinking and future studies, there are tools and methods that we need to teach our children. I'm a mother myself. There's so many shortcomings in the current education curriculum, and in a country like South Africa, where so many of our youngsters are without agency, not really living in huge uncertainty. I mean, it's all over the world, but I think particularly in South Africa, with our historic background. So in parallel with doing my master's, I've been doing workshops with little ones, and workshops with teenagers, and workshops with some students, and it's been a hell of a ride. Thanks, Ilette.
Thanks, Zanne. And can I mention that you come from the CA background, so you've really taken a big jump or a big change. But we're very excited about what Teach the Future is doing, and the IFR is actually partnering with Teach the Future just to see how we could give back to the youth of today. So in conclusion, I thought maybe just to ask you one more question. Some of you have already started sharing around that, but maybe just share what it is that excites you currently. Is there any projects that you're working on that you'd like to share, just to give people a bit more insight into what this is? I think, like Marguerite said, anthropology, people don't always understand what that is. I think when you talk about futures thinking or foresight, there's not always a clear understanding of what that is. And maybe a practical example of work that you're busy with, or something that you've done in the last year or so that you feel that you can share, just to give people a further glimpse into the life of someone within futures thinking and futures research. So if I may, Doris, can I pick on you to start off again?
Yeah, anytime, sure. So in my personal capacity, I'm working on a PhD that is going to focus on the futures of gig work in South Africa, and the things that, specifically the kind of things that are necessary within a complex system to make gig work happen, and whether we have it or not. So that's the PhD topic, a lot of focus on futures of work, but specifically focusing in on gig work. I thought about which ones would I highlight, because at the IFR, you know, we do such exciting work. But the most recent one that I've just finished, that I hope would contribute a little bit to the decision makers in the country. I was part of quite a significant project where we thought about the influence of the lockdown measures on smaller businesses in South Africa. And that one has just been finished, so it would probably be released later this week or so. And my part of that was to create qualitative scenarios of what could happen under different circumstances. And then I had a really exciting one with the Sugarcane Farmers Association, because the sugar industry has all kinds of interesting influences on them at the moment in terms of the industry, but also in terms of climate change and where you can plant what kind of kinds of sugarcane at the moment in South Africa. So that was a really exciting thinking session. And they wanted to explore what the industry could look like so that they could make decisions for themselves as to what to do going forward. And then we had a really nice one about different kinds of properties, commercial properties, retail properties, and industrial properties. And what we did there, the client came to us and said, we have partnered with an academic institution before, and we really didn't get great joy, because they gave us a fat report and we couldn't do anything with it. And I thought, okay, can I see the report? And they showed it to me, and it was an amazing report. It was really so well done. And then the client said, what must we do with it? We can't do anything. We want stories. We want to see what it could, and that's where we touch on those images. People need to be able to see those images of what it could look like. So we sort of flipped the process over, and we created, Zanne was part of that team. We put together a few people and said, let's create them a few different stories of what a certain type of property could look like somewhere in the future, based on trends and emerging technologies and stuff. So the trends and technologies were there, and they are in the report, but front and center was the stories, and they loved it. So I think that was one of my most exciting projects so far this year.
Thank you, Doris. And you definitely don't have a boring life, that I can attest to myself. Maree, if I can ask you if you can share anything from, that excites you or that you're currently working on or something like that.
I think in the last couple of years, I've realised that it's when you're in a workshop with, I've been working with universities, with non-profits, with government departments, a whole range of areas, but it's when somebody in the workshop, you can see their foresight light bulb go on, and you can see it in their face, and you go, yes, that's what really excites me, because it doesn't happen all that often, in workshops and things. But when you get feedback and somebody says, I've never done this sort of thinking before, but I absolutely love it. I love it. I'm going to use it with my staff. And that's, then this is worthwhile, because it's up here. It's the thinking that has to change before action can change. And my PhD brought that home in the sense of these contested worldviews, and how if the people who are so diametrically opposed about what the university is and what it could be or should be actually listened to each other and talked together instead of butting heads, all sorts of different futures could emerge. So, as I said, the last few years, I've just thought that's probably where I somehow, after I might hope to submit my PhD in October, and post that, I want to try and shift my business into that more cognitive space. Don't know how I'm going to do that yet, but we'll see. So that's exciting too.
Very. And I think the beauty of futures thinking and future studies and futures research is that there's always multiple options. I think that's what really excited me about it, is that there's no right or wrong, if I can say that, but there's always multiple opportunities or multiple options that you can choose from. And it's not necessarily wrong. It's just being able to have well thought through decisions that drives you. And that's really what excited me. So on that note, Deirdre, anything from your side that you want to share?
Yes, I think I have to add to what Maree said. Our role really is about helping leaders to look at the future. And, we say the leaders need to look to the future. And I think the reality, especially now, is that leaders are looking at the here and now, and they are managing the crises that we are seeing. And our role is really to say, we will do the heavy lifting for you. We will look to see what is happening in the industry. We will go into your organization. And I think, and then, it's really about packaging those insights and making sense for them. And I think why I love it and why it excites me is I have the organizational background where I can make it practical and say, these are the implications, these are the alternative futures. And then when you get to that space, up until now, they're going, that's lovely and that's great. And you get to that point with them, and it's almost like exactly what Marie's saying. The lights are like in their eyes, and they're like, and they fall in love with it as much as you do. And I think it's all about, I get my passion and my excitement from guiding leaders and helping them to be able to achieve the success that all of us can. And I think from a project perspective, another thing that I really love about Futures is that it cuts across different functions within organizations. I've worked on projects where we've done product development, where we bring in design thinking from a futures perspective, where another one is looking at a strategic value proposition within an energy company. So you look at it from a systems perspective. What is happening in retail, in the future of mobility, in the future of energy, and then to say, what do you stand for now, and what do you want to stand for, and how do you get there? And then even to the point of looking at organizational design. So I looked at a company within the FMCG field, and it was where, in the future world of work, where does innovation sit as a capability? And and then it's all the way to doing really a research report that you give to an advertising agency, and they then have the growth discussions with their clients. And it really changes it from a, what do we do now, activate tactical, to where are we going with our products and brands. And really, that's what really excites me, is it's not the same every day. You go from a workshop to a strategic discussion to making brands come alive.
Great, thanks, Deirdre. And I think that's the exciting part, is that it fits in every category and every area within a business. And if we can get more people to think futures, that'll be great. So on that note, Marguerite, what are you working on, or what excites you at the moment?
I think one of the things I learned from this field is that it's at the edge of chaos where change happens. So of course I choose now during a pandemic to quit my day job, because it's the logical thing to do. So I'll be joining the gig economy that Doris is talking about. But I think for me, what Futures also taught me is that you obviously can't predict what's going to happen, but you can identify and explore the factors that contribute to creating the future. And I think that's where the secret lies, understanding how all those pieces fit together and interact and how they might play out. But what I'm currently working on, I started a project called Omniology, which translates to the study or knowledge of everything, because why pick one thing when you can just study everything? And the aim there is to kind of bring together the two worlds of anthropology, so understanding what makes us human, and foresight, understanding where humans are going and how do we create, a better world for everyone. And one of the ways I'm doing that is I'm trying to develop this tool, which I guess you could say is kind of an alternative to talking about a VUCA world. So the word I use is Dela, which is a Zulu word, which translates to being satisfied or having had enough. And it also translates to making a sacrifice or giving something up. And the acronym stands for dynamic, emergent, liminal, and anthropocentric. So it's just a bit more of an empowering local way of looking at the world.
Great. Well, we look forward to seeing that tool developing and seeing what comes from that, because I know that in Africa specifically, we need to embrace our view on futures and how that impacts the continent. And we've got lots of diversity on this continent. So we do need to do it ourselves. So on that note, Zanne, if you can share with us just a few final thoughts on what excites you.
Thanks, Elite. I was thinking about your question, because we had the questions beforehand. And for me, I think the essence of futures thinking and foresight is that notion that there are multiple possible, plausible alternatives. And in a time where people are slightly despondent, for me, futures thinking is a source of hope. There is not only one future that is put upon us, and with the thinking that comes with the field, we can actually actively work towards our preferred future. So that's the one part that excites me, is the hope that it gives people. And then the other part is interesting, because it goes back to what you said, Doris, when we were thinking about the future of retail. And more than any other field that I've worked in, I find that the futures world is all about collaboration. It is all about participating in this, whatever is emerging together. So when people are thinking together with their diverse perspectives and with their different worldviews and their biases and whatever comes with it, something emerges that wasn't there before. And for me, that's when the magic happens. And that really, every single time that I'm in a conversation about whatever topic it is, because really we can talk about the future of literally anything. When the minds come together, something magical happens. And I also, I've seen that same spark in the eyes of the children that we work with. So for me, it's the combination of that magic in the bigger corporate world, but then seeing it in children. There's an extra level of excitement for me in that, because you have a child that walks into the workshop that has no idea of their own power, and they might not walk out of there completely empowered, because we all know that there are change happening to us whether we like it or not. But they also realize that somewhere there's a little seedling that sprouted, and hopefully it will grow with them, to give them that sense that they can make some difference to their own future. So that excites me every day.
Thank you, Zanne. And I think you've really hit the nail on the head there. What we find often, or what I find, is that people actually need to experience that magic for them to really understand what this is. You know, you can try and explain it and you can try and position it as much as you like, but until they've experienced the magic a little bit, that's when the penny drops, like you've all said. So ladies, a really big thank you for talking with me and talking together. I really feel that this is an opportunity that we need to share with people. This is the hope that it does give, I think, is what we need in the world, and specifically in South Africa. And also not to necessarily go to the negative and the collapse futures and the dystopian, which we so easily do thanks to Hollywood. So really, thank you for your time. Thank you for your inspiration and for your input into this conversation. And I'd like to invite people watching us to please help us celebrate women. Please share this video, watch this video, tell your friends about the video, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We will be posting a few more during the course of this month. And let's celebrate the hope that futures thinking give and the women in the world. So thank you very much.